Last week we began to look at the Mass, and to answer that question, is the Mass a sacrifice or a meal? So if you didn't see last week's episode, pause this and go check it out. We talked about the Mass as a sacrifice, and so today we're going to talk about the Mass as a meal, because the answer is yes, it's both a sacrifice and a meal. And like so many other things in theology, we get into bad territory when we want to separate and say it's either or, when so much of Catholic theology is it's both and. So today, let's look at the Mass as a meal. Because remember, that Last Supper, that special meal that we recall when we celebrate Mass together, was not just an ordinary meal. It was a Passover meal. Christ intended to celebrate the Passover with his apostles. So what does that mean? When we look at the liturgical feast of Passover, we remember that the Israelites had to sacrifice a lamb and spread its blood over their doorposts. But even if they just did this, well, they had to do something else to save their firstborn son, right? If you only sacrificed the lamb and spread its blood over your doorpost and you went to bed, you'd wake up the next morning with the death of your firstborn son, because you had to eat the lamb. You shared that lamb with your family. And so we see here that eating, that partaking of that meal is important. And so when we look at the Mass is a meal, because Christ then fulfills and surpasses that Passover sacrifice by giving himself as the lamb, by becoming the sacrifice the next day on the cross. And so when we celebrate Mass, we are being united with Calvary, like we looked at last week, but also with that Last Supper. Passover and the Last Supper were liturgical sacrificial meals. Christ transforms it and makes it into the wedding feast of the Lamb we see beautifully spoken of in the book of Revelation. St. Paul clearly saw that this was a meal, right? He says, is the participation, is the sharing of the cup not a participation in the body and blood of Christ? And so that participation in this meal brings us into unity with Christ and unity with our brothers and sisters. So when we see the Mass as a meal, we recognize that it's important that we share in that unity with our brothers and sisters, but that it's more than just a sharing amongst friends, but that it's a liturgical sacrificial meal. I think St. Thomas Aquinas said it best when he prayed, "O sacred banquet in which Christ is received, the memory of his passion is recalled, the mind is filled with grace, and the pledge of future glory, heaven, is given us." Both and. And that's Little Theology in 3 minutes. Hey friends, thanks for watching. If you like Theology in 3, please like, subscribe, and share. And leave your feedback in the comments, because I would love to dialogue with you. There is a lot more content coming. God bless.